Now, if you know professional wrestling, you have assuredly heard of the Von Erich family. They were Texas wrestling royalty during the 80s, and The Iron Claw, written and directed by Sean Durkin, attempts to explore their many triumphs in the ring and the string of tragedies that sadly struck this family on the outside of it. I'm going to tell you where I think this movie thrives, where it sputters a bit, but why ultimately I think it's one of the best films of the year. So let's get into it.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Flag of war. You gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Hey, what's up out there, everybody? Thank you guys, as always, for clicking on the video. I greatly appreciate it. I'm Anthony DeJoya. This is Movies Never Say Die, your home for 100% movie talk. Now, growing up, I was a huge wrestling fan from like 83 to maybe 1990. I watched all the different shows from the wrestling territories. I was always an NWA kid. Guys like Ric Flair and the Road Warriors and Sting and Nikita Koloff were my favorites, but the WCCW with names like the Von Erichs and the Freebirds were certainly pumping out some quality ring action as well. Over the years, I had heard about some of the tragedies that piled up on this family as the deaths mounted over the years. There was no internet then, but the curse of the Von Erichs was certainly a known thing, so I was super interested in seeing how Durkin would explore all of these different events, and I think for the most part that he does a masterful job. So let's dive right into the positives, and there I think you need to start with the well-structured screenplay. This movie really is required to explore a lot of different characters over several years, and I think the balance of all these moving pieces is just fantastic. It results in the movie with a seamless forward progression that maintains its intrigue throughout. Durkin's able to set the foundation for how this family operated under the rule of Fitz and how he was able to instill his manipulation onto his boys. The brothers are given time to explore both their personal and professional lives, as well as capturing all that underlying competition between them that was fueled by their father. So I certainly think The Iron Claw has a very tight and for the most part evenly paced narrative at its core to lure you in, and this is where I think the collection of very strong performances will come in and be able to command your attention. I think Zac Efron continues to excel in these more serious performances, and here once again I think he delivers his most well-rounded. He's completely jacked for the role, maybe a bit too much, which we'll get into here in a moment, but as far as the emotional layering of his character, the trauma, the motivation, the sadness, I certainly think Efron lands it all effectively. And I think Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, and Lily James were all strong for this film as well, but Holt McCallany really does come in and steal the show. I think in actuality, it's his character that is the most important for this film. Fritz was the man who ruled this family. He seemingly used his boys as pawns to continue his wrestling business, and his relentless selfishness in spite of his boys dying one after the other was just fascinating to see. He's bristly, he's tough, he's loving in very brief glimpses, and constantly calculating, and all of this was navigated perfectly in McCallany's performance. And something else I really loved about this film was just the overall aesthetic. The visual effects are so well done to accurately capture that old feel and vibe of the early 80s professional wrestling shows, and this is where I think The Iron Claw feels like a nostalgic step into a time capsule to the days when I was a kid sitting in front of the TV on Saturday nights watching wrestling when everybody in the house was asleep. From the intros to the music to the promos and the overlays, it's awesome, and you really can tell that Durkin was a fan of this era of wrestling from some of these smaller details. And also, with any wrestling movie, no matter how much the focus is on the outside life and drama, you want some in-ring action, and this is another strength for the film because I think the practical stunt work to recreate some of these well-known matches was another detail I appreciated when watching. So overall, this film delivers a tightly organized story with strong performances and immersive visuals. However, as much as I do love this film, The Iron Claw isn't perfect because the story, while the progression is consistent and the emotional and historical substance it explores is plenty compelling, it does leave out one of the sons. I understand this is an already packed film, but working in Chris, the youngest member of the Von Erich family, and how he would ultimately take his own life, I think should have been added for some accuracy, and I think the subplot of Kevin's love life could have been trimmed up a little bit to work Chris in while not extending the overall runtime that much. Another drawback for this film for me would be the casting of some of the non-Von Erich wrestlers. Some of them are so over the top, it's laughable and sort of just off in relation to the rest of the film. The guy who plays Ric Flair is terrible. I can go do a better Ric Flair than that. The guy who plays Harley Race is not the best either. Neither are the Freebirds, specifically Terry Gordy. It just feels like with a film taking itself so seriously that better casting choices would have been made that would have allowed these guys to fit more naturally into the film instead of feeling like guys pulled off the street and thrown into some costumes from Party City. And these are a little bit nitpicky, but I think it was a little bit strange that Efron was so beefed up for the role of Kevin when Carrie, played by White, was the actual brother with the biggest physique. This at all doesn't hinder the film by any means. It's just a little bit of the smaller details that I think fans of wrestling might notice when they're watching. But like I said, it doesn't hinder the film because overall I think it was fantastic. I certainly think the positives far outweigh the few negatives. I think this was a movie that far exceeded my already high expectations, which doesn't happen very often. It's a compelling film with so much emotional meat to it that it will grab your heartstrings whether you're a fan of this era of wrestling or not. So I'm going to give the Iron Claw a very well-earned 9 out of 10. I highly recommend checking this film out. It's so well done, and that's my review of the Iron Claw. Thank you for watching, guys. I appreciate you guys as always. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you did. I'll see you all soon in my next review, and until then, movies never say die.